Okay, so let's pretend for a second you are ready to render. I'm going to just really quickly show how to set up some rendering stuff. First things first, we'll want to add a backdrop for us. And I had already made this one, but I'm just going to delete it out of the scene and add a new one. So I just add a plane. I'm just pressing S to scale it up. I'll move it over here, and then I'm going to go into edit mode. While I'm in edit mode, I just grab that back edge, press the E key to extrude, press the Z key to lock it in the Z direction, and then while we're back in object mode, can add a bevel modifier. And the bevel is just going to help us smooth that back piece out. So you can just increase the amount that it's jutting with the amount tab, and then the segments you want to crank that up and then apply that. And that's how we have our studio backdrop, the easiest version of it anyway. And I'm going to add a color to it. So I'm going to make a new material for this backdrop. I'll go to a diffuse BSDF, and I'm going to pick a kind of orangey color. I had already initially set up this camera just by positioning myself and then pressing Control-Alt numpad 0. Of course, you can just jump into control the camera by the view there, or while I'm in the camera and have it active, I'm actually just going to manually zero out these rotations. And then I'm just going to actually use these controls to position it nicely. This plane is already orthogonal, so we don't have to worry about that. But we don't have a light in our scene. So I just came up here and I clicked the same collection with the camera, just so things can stay organized. I'll keep the camera and the light up there together. And I'm going to add a light, and the easiest one to add is a sun. So we'll start there. With the sun selected, I'm just going to go to the light tab, and I'm going to increase the strength on that sun to 10. And I'm going to increase the angle to about 10%. You don't have to do this, but it makes the light a little bit more diffuse, which I think looks better. Then you can just rotate this sun around, and if you go to the rendered view, this can be really useful to help you see how the sun is reacting. So we have a very nice orangey background and this kind of gross yellow shading here. I was trying to get it closer to the duck, and I'll probably spend a little bit more time doing that here before we keep going, but I have this ready. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go back to the viewport shading, and we're going to go through some of the render settings. The first thing you'll want to do, or what you'll notice here probably first, is that you're in the Eevee renderer, and this is a real-time renderer, which is pretty nice. It's very much like Unreal. If you move the sun, you get the real-time updates, but the quality isn't that great. And it's actually even missing some shadowing. So what we're going to do is, it's probably best to switch out of the rendered view to swap, because sometimes this can take a while to load depending on how complex the scene is. But I'm going to swap over to Cycles. And now Cycles is the more powerful but slower rendering engine that's default to Blender. It's honestly, I think it's better than V-Ray in a lot of cases, but V-Ray is still pretty comparable. The nice thing about this is, depending on your hardware, it lets you pick if you want to render on your CPU or your GPU. In general, a GPU is better at rendering, but depending on what kind of computer you have, you may leave it as CPU, and that will be fine. I swap it over to GPU, and that'll help me record this tutorial a bit faster. Here, the viewport settings will have the sample count lower than the render settings, and so this is the viewport settings here are if you click the rendered view mode option up top. So you could really bump this quality if you want here, but I don't really think that's recommended. In general, you want to leave the higher settings set to this render tab here, and I even have the denoise mode checked, and so these will be activated whenever you go to render image up here in the top left of the screen. Before we do that though, we want to change our format. And so this is in the Output tab, and this is where you pick the resolution for all of the cameras or any of the outputs of the scene. For this particular workshop, we want 1080 by 1080, a nice square image. And of course we can play with the camera still after this. So this is just setting the ratio. And if you're going to render an animation or anything, you can just pick the file output here. It's defaulted to your temp folder, but I'll save it here to my workshops folder instead. It allows you to pick things like your file format and compression. Usually I just leave it at PNG, but you could pick another format if you so desire. If you're doing any video work and animation, this has some more controls for that specifically, and your entire animation would be rendered to whatever output folder you denote here. So I'm actually going to go swap to the rendered mode, and this is pretty similar to what we would get if we hit render. And while I have the camera selected, we can do a few camera adjustments perhaps here, and I will change the focal length to zoom it in. I will slide it across to the right a bit, and now I'm going to actually adjust the sun a bit more. You'll see this is the difference between the real-time renderer and the Cycles renderer. Is Cycles takes longer, and so it's got noise and things in the scene, but it generally looks quite a lot better. And we'll say we're happy with this, hypothetically. I'll just play around with the ground plane, see where I might actually want it here. I have these signs hanging off the bottom of the building, so it starts to look a little weird if they're too close to the ground, maybe. This would be a great spot for a little character in hindsight. And now, if you're happy, you could hit render. I'm not totally sold on this material just yet. I want to adjust the color a bit more, and I'm just gonna try to get it closer to the duck. I might try a couple more colors on the background first though. Once you have your scene more or less ready to go, of course you can also play with the light color. I think I'll leave it at white for now. What I'm going to do is, in the camera settings, I'm going to try some depth of field. So I'm really quickly just going to get a gauge. I'm at like minus 183 x, or sorry, y, and about minus 31 there. So this will have to be pretty huge. What we can do is we can activate the depth of field and select our object as the focus, and then if you lower the f-stop, it will narrow the focal range. So here it's not going to make a big difference because this is so large. So what we would actually need to do to make this more impactful is scale this whole thing down. So I just have both of these selected. I will scale them quite a bit down. And this will allow us to move the camera significantly closer. So we'll do this. And you'll notice as I do this, like the setup isn't going to be drastically different for the render. It honestly will look very similar. But the main difference is that a lot of these numbers are going to be smaller. Now these are much closer together, or much closer to the camera. So when I activate the depth of field, the effects will be much more extreme. So now when I look at the camera, it's at 12, and this object is at 28. So the focal length there, it would be about 16. I would say I'm pretty happy with this setup now. It's taken me a bit to get it, but once you're ready, of course, you can save your file, but you just hit render image. And now it will take your render settings and it will render out this and denoise it. So you'll see this will take longer than the viewport rendering, but it's going to be a more careful render. Voila, there's our first render. To be critical of it, I did this really quick and dirty just for the tutorial, but I think this can be much better. And I'm actually going to go through and make some more of these, and I'll just speed them up really quick and show you the results.